Welcome. So I'm cold, which is why I'm still wearing my hat. And so it's an interesting somatic experience. So notice what your somatic experience is presently. So I named mine, I called it, I'm cold. I can notice what is that. So I notice that I have a kind of a vibration happening, which my mind interprets as a shiver. It's a shivering. So notice what can you sense in your somatic experience? What is the direct experience, the raw experience, the unmediated experience? And notice how that translates into some kind of model or an idea that you can give language to, so that it has a location, it has a name. You like it or you don't like it. So this is a very simple and direct way to practice somatics. So now what also I notice is that there is a layer of kind of a suppressive layer, a layer that seeks to suppress the activity. So this is what's learned. So we have it's like it's like socialization. This is what socialization is doing, is it's imposing this model of what should be. So how I should appear, how I should behave, what is expected of me in order to be accepted. That is also happening. It's part of the same, it's part of the same somatic learning. So there's this inner tension going on, this interplay between how I should be, how I perceive myself to be, and the direct experience as it is, the rawness. So you can, if you're not already in a comfortable posture, then allow yourself that. So notice, what are you doing presently that prevents that connection, that sense of support? So there's something that you're doing that is interfering with you receiving the support. The support is here. That support somatically, we could say, is the, well, physiologically, okay, we can say that it is the skeletal structure is that support. Gravity is that support. The earth is that support. Because you know that if you are not doing anything, if you were not taking any action at all, if you were not engaging your musculature at all, if there was no energy going into that, you're only supported, your only structure is the bones and the earth. And that relationship becomes even more intimate if there's no activity going on to keep one upright. So we're noticing right now, what am I doing that is interfering with me receiving that support? I want to experience that support. But something seems to be interfering with that. I'm looking presently, and I'm inviting you to look presently at what am I doing that is interfering. So as I'm describing my own experience, I'm inviting you to look to your experience. I'm describing my experience just to provide a guide, but you have to apply it to your own direct inquiry. So the fire is going more now, so it's starting to warm up a little bit, but I still feel quite cold. So what I'm describing as feeling cold, that's at a level of certain threshold of what consciousness. That's a label. But if I allow myself to let go of that and to really just be present to the direct experience, then what I notice is that there's a vibration that I would call a shiver still happening. And actually, when I'm just with that experience, it's neutral. There's nothing bad about it. But what is also happening that I can be aware of is I'm just observing. So I'm just observing essentially the somatic conditioning. I can see that there are multiple conditions present. One is that I want to be aware and connected to the support that's here. So that's one desire. But there's a conflicting desire, which is this other somatic conditioning that says, but you don't want to be shaking, because if you're shaking, then that seems strange. If you're yourself, that will be bad. That's dangerous to be yourself. So how did this conditioning come about? In the brilliance of this work is that it doesn't matter. So other ways that we can approach the same fundamental thing, which is the conditioning that we're not happy with, is we can approach it by having to assign some memory to it, right? So this is an approach where we say, I'll dig around in the past. And it's a valid approach. It's just a different approach than the somatic approach. They can work together. But in that approach where we have to dig around in the past and make sense of things and have a story that helps us, that's different. But here we don't need to be concerned about when the conditioning came about. What's happening now is we're just observing what that conditioning actually is. And at a somatic level, so there's an impulse to control. There's an impulse to contract. And then there's this other one, which is the one that says, yeah, but you gotta really be here. You gotta engage. So Hannah describes these as red light and green light reflexes. They're seen in very early on. So infants are born with red light, which is to withdraw. So it's the most, for apparently for all species of animals and even amoebas, it's that reflex is there with this withdrawal reflex upon certain stimulation that's perceived to the organism as threatening. There's a withdrawal, and for humans it protects some of the vital organs in the abdominal cavity particularly. So it's protective, but it's not going to help us to move forward because it's only concerned with protection. So we can notice how that feels. You could even move into that so you can feel the withdrawal red light. So that the whole front side contracts and you come forward. Well, you're moving backward in space. So you can feel what that feels like. You can notice that the face gets tight, the jaw tenses up, the chest collapses, the shoulders roll forward, the throat is closed off, the abdomen's tight. And you can feel what that feels like and what that whole embodied experience is, the full somatic experience of that red light reflex, that withdrawal. You notice where your attention goes, what your focus is. It becomes very condensed so that your only focus, right, is on getting through this right now, just surviving right now. That's it, just surviving right now. That becomes your only focus. So some of us have experienced that for long periods of time where this pattern is so established and there's not even anything countering it. Then see if you can come back into neutral, but notice then to come back into neutral, you have more information now because you consciously went into that red light pattern. When you come out, take your time to feel that experience of coming out. Notice how you do it. Notice, are you really coming out of it or are you actually countering it? Because countering it is green light. But see, can you start to differentiate between pure red light, this contracted withdrawal, and then to come back to neutral? Take your time. And it can be very helpful to do it with eyes closed. So if you're not doing that with eyes closed, I would recommend it, because as long as you have confidence in your balance, if you have any lack of confidence in your balance, do it with your eyes open. Okay, so then, and if you need to repeat that a few times, do so, because that will help you to get clearer. So these are some principles in the somatic exploration that we want to move purposefully. We want to move with awareness. We want to move slowly. So we want to have some purpose in the movement. If we don't have purpose in the movement, then why are we doing it? We see how that's happening sometimes. If you look at young children sometimes, and they got to just move, just to move. Well, that's what's happened. Is why are they doing that? It's the same as if you look at what we have baby goats presently. So the baby goats, they do, this leaping, hopping thing. It's very cute, but they're not doing it to be cute. That's not their purpose. What they're doing is they haven't developed fine control over these primary movements that they need for the rest of their lives. So they're clunky. They're not clear in, the basics are there, but it has to be repeated many times before there starts to be better clarity. Then when they leap, it doesn't just look like this cute, funny thing. It starts to look more graceful because those patterns have become more refined, more efficient. What's happening for us is that we are socialized, and we also encounter trauma, which is another thing, which we're not going to probably go into too much detail on today because it's a little bit more complex. We want to take more time with that. But these patterns are repeated to become more refined. We often don't repeat these patterns enough to gain the clarity. Instead, what we do is through the socialization, we suppress. So you notice that what happens then is that the motor cortical activity is still taking place in order to do these flailing movements. Why? Because of what I was describing. So this shivering in my nervous system has been identified as a threat that needs to be suppressed. So instead of actually learning how to have the shivering experience in a more refined, elegant, more efficient way, which would be health promoting, because it's about energy transference. So we want to have that in the most efficient way. But instead of that happening, there was a suppression program initiated that said, make sure that doesn't happen. Now, that's not about relaxing into the experience and allowing it to become more refined until it's not outwardly perceptible, but it's only inwardly experienced as a kind of ecstasy. Because that's the purified somatic experience. The purified somatic experience is where there's such a flow in the experience that there's just a sense of poise, balance, ease, confidence, which all come as a result of competence. But with these, we've got these two competing things going on, two competing programs. One is, the shivering must happen. The other one is shivering is not allowed. So we need to identify these two things. Now, the shivering must happen actually is a more of a movement of green light. It's this opening. The suppression is more of this red light, withdrawal, must make it stop, have to just survive. When both of those are running at the same time, they don't cancel one another out. They generate this vice that's squeezing from back and front. And so we become pulled down by gravity, because you have to remember there's the life force in essence, we could say, is what that is that keeps us upright. It is that which is operating in a sense to counterbalance gravity. So we're in this intimate relationship with gravity, and all right, we've got so much energy to make use of, but we want that energy to be perfectly balanced up and down, so that we're not working extra hard to keep ourselves upright, and thereby experiencing the heaviness of life. Life is a burden. Instead, what we want to recognize the unnecessary misuses of these fundamental reflexes are happening, and they're happening unconsciously, because this is what Hannah calls sensory motor amnesia. So you want to just start to notice, however you are right now, whatever your posture is right now, notice just simply the sense of being inhabiting this life. Okay, you can start to get just a sense of that, just a sense that I'm here, and I'm not. It's not just that I'm aware. I am aware, but also I am here. I am aware, and I am here. I am here. I am embodied, and that embodiment is not exclusively the domain of the physical body. The physical body is one aspect of that. But when we are often more identified as these sub parts of the whole self, or of the somatic self. So we're more identified with the physical, we're more identified with the mental, more identified with the emotional. These are all aspects of the self, but they're sub parts of the self, or more differentiated aspects of the self. So the self is aware and embodied at a more subtle level. So there's a more subtle awareness, more subtle sensitivity. So you can, instead of feeling weighed down, you start to notice the lightness of being. Really, you can start to feel into that. You just start to notice, well, where am I making all this unnecessary effort? And you just have to start to feel into it at this subtler level. You could even say it's more like at an energetic level. You can start to feel how you can be directly attuned to the experience, to the somatic experience, without giving so much attention to the mental model, for example. Because what starts to happen, you'll notice, is parts of you start to move if you just allow yourself to feel what is the most effortless. You just start to play with that. You just start to notice where you can sense just the pure energy of self, completely independent of your mental model of your body. And you'll just allow that to guide your exploration. So you'll feel how things are moving, they're shifting, and then you have to let them stay in these kind of strange ways where you're certain, absolutely certain, that you are all twisted in a very strange way and that you're about to fall over and all these things, because this is the trick of proprioception. When it gets locked into a particular model, it will just do everything to maintain that model, regardless of reality. This is why we see people who think they're upright and they're not. They're anything but. They're hunched over and they're at a weird angle, and you ask them, how are you? Are you upright? Yep. So their brain is telling them that they're upright. That's why they stand that way. We think, oh, that's because they were in an accident, or oh, that's because they are old. That's a good one, which Hannah takes apart in his book Somatics, which is an excellent book that I recommend to anybody who is sincerely interested in somatics. It's not the be all end all, but it is it will inform and be helpful and hopefully enrich your experience of these meetings if you read that book, if you are so inclined. But notice in your direct experience that you think, I'm all distorted now, as you're relaxing. You see, you're letting the lightness of being be your guide. Take that as it's a truth, that there is such a thing as lightness of being, that being is inherently light. And your brain will say, no, that's not true. That's silly. That's just, why is he saying that? That's just some nonsense, some weird nonsense that he's saying. But don't listen to that. Instead, just stay with the actual experience and just notice, what if I start to really trust in the lightness of being? Just start to notice that I am light, I am. And anything where I'm noticing discomfort, anything where I'm noticing strain, anything where I'm noticing fear, anything where I'm noticing any of the things that seem to plague me, I'm going to just start to explore it in this way at a subtler level, which is really, I would say, the truly somatic way to view. So we can use other entry points to get to a somatic experiencing experience. But however that comes about, this is it. Just to feel right now this lightness of being, and notice just these habits of recontracting into these things that your brain thinks must be, these things that you're releasing into must be wrong. That's what the brain keeps saying. It's just this, what are you doing? This is crazy. You're twisting yourself up. You're leaning over now. This isn't right. This is all wrong. And the funny thing about it is, it may be wrong, but it's less wrong than what you were doing a second ago. That's all. But you have to allow this to integrate, meaning you have to really continue to consciously stay present to the experience and release whatever is not needed. Because you have to ask yourself, might it be that well, that's too far reaching. I was going to say all my problems, but let's reel it in a little bit. Might it be that a good percentage, better than half of my problems may be due entirely to the fact that I'm making all of this unnecessary effort all the time. So that think seriously about that, because you notice right now, if you're paying attention, that's what we're doing, is we're paying attention to our somatic experience as best we can, and understand that early on we're not very skilled at it, so we can't do it for too long. We become fatigued. So you give yourself a rest but then when you come back, as soon as you have the energy to do it, and you just start to notice again this lightness of being, and open to this possibility that what if I'm not doing what's unnecessary, that maybe that experience might actually be better than what I've been experiencing. I mean, it actually just makes perfect sense, doesn't it? That if I'm not, certainly, if all other things being equal, am I better off exerting unnecessary effort in some unconscious muscular contraction 24/7 or not? Am I better? Which one am I better off with? All other things being equal, clearly I'm better off not doing that thing that I don't need to do, right? And you can start to see how doing just that one thing, like if I'm just doing this thing with this one shoulder, and everybody just thinks, hey, that's that guy, he's just that guy. He's just built that way, I guess. He's just that guy. He's always got one. Surely he knows. He knows. He must know everybody, because everybody knows. So I won't say anything to him because it might make him feel weird or uncomfortable. So nobody ever tells him. And it doesn't matter if anybody tells him anyway, because nobody knows what to do about it. Except some people do, which is, oh, don't learn how to not do that. First, you have to learn that you're doing it. Then you have to learn how to not do it. So for learning that you're doing it means slowing down. That's why we slow down. You slow down, all of a sudden so this is unconscious incompetence when we're just doing this and we have no idea. It's unconscious. It's conscious incompetence when we slow down and we realize, oh yeah, I'm doing that. Then it becomes conscious competence when we learn that I can do that. And then it becomes unconscious competence when we repeat this so many times with enough awareness that we've really got clear on it and we don't need to think about it anymore. And instead, our brain just now knows this is better. That's the good thing now. That's what we do. When in doubt, do this because this works. This is good. But up until that point, the brain is still holding on to this is the right thing to do. I've got to keep doing this, is what the brain says. And you have this experience and you're like, yeah, that's pretty good. And then somehow you find yourself back here. And then you can do this, and then you just keep doing that but you can speed that process up if you consciously repeat it. Then what you're doing is you're learning what's better. It's just about removing the inefficiencies, because between here and here, there's an awful lot of inefficiency, right? It's not a little tiny bit of inefficiency. That's an enormous amount of inefficiency. So to get from here to here, and most of us, it's not just this, because this also turns into this, which turns into this, and then this, so that you've got all these funny compensations, and they're all like that, bundled up. So to get from here to here requires, we have to do it many times slowly with awareness to get clear on, oh, that's all the wrong ways. Those are all the wrong things. Those are all the things that are not helpful. Those are all the things that they're not necessary. just this here, this is what helps me keep me upright with absolute minimum unnecessary effort. Just like this, that, I'm feeling so good. That's the thing, is that we should feel good. Notice that that's the conditioning, that's the programming of the world, is that they're saying it's okay to feel bad because everybody feels bad. That's because very, very few people know that there is honestly, legitimately another possibility. Most people are cynics. Most people think that there's nobody who knows because it's not even possible. There are people who know. There really are. There aren't even those who know. Very few of them know how to communicate it. I'm not claiming that I'm an excellent communicator on it. It's a challenge. I think it's a challenging thing to get clear on. So it's a messy business, but the key ingredients are slow down, be aware, and just let go of whatever is unnecessary, and then keep on trusting in that, because you have to be aware of this process as it takes place, so that you don't get you don't want your efforts, so to speak, to go to waste, because if you kind of have to complete the cycle for any of it to be of real value. So you want to complete that cycle in this somatic learning experience as often as possible. Ideally, every single time you are, well, I'd say in the ideal, every single time that you are moving. I mean, that's sort of like the ultimate of mindfulness, is that you are so completely involved in the this one thing. When I move, I am moving, it's like, if this movement is happening, I am this movement. I'm not this and something else. So that would be the ideal. But short of that, which is where we're going to find ourselves, we want to just, as often as possible, we want to bring this kind of awareness to our movement, because this, and to be embodied, which we all are, is to mean that there's going to be a significant amount of your nervous system's processing. It will be consumed by the lower level things, such as making sure this body is okay. And so if we don't attend to it, we will be plagued by anxiety over it, and we'll experience that anxiety as pain, depression, anger, all of these other things. But that anxiety is tension. That tension is because there's fear. The fear is because it's unknown. It's unknown because I don't have skill here. I don't have skill because I haven't given it attention. And I have not given it attention because I have learned to avoid giving attention to fear, but instead to run away from it. But the somatic experience offers us a new possibility. I think it's extraordinarily powerful. I I personally know that it is extraordinarily powerful. I know others who know for themselves that it's extraordinarily powerful. I thereby imagine that it is applicable to everybody. I think it must be equally powerful for everybody who is willing to do it. And if you're willing to become a student of the somatic experience, I believe you will be richly rewarded. I believe that you will find that it offers benefits that you can imagine and benefits that you can't yet imagine, but they're nonetheless true. Are there limits to it? I don't know. We can find out, I guess. But that's why I'm enthusiastic about sharing it, because I want more people to know. I want more people to have the experience, because I know that it can change your life. So here I want to offer some things to be aware of. So we're still hopefully just observing the somatic experience. So you might notice that when your attention goes to other things, so I noticed that my attention was going more to other things because I was trying to describe something somewhat abstract using words. So that was, I found that a bit challenging, and I used this tense posture unconsciously, this sort of red light posture, and it just creeps in there because it's a habit. So that's the thing about these patterns, is to, when you understand the red light and green light are just templates that are built into the organism. So these are the base, these are, in a sense, you can say that the palette, fundamental palette exists of somatic experience can be reduced to just red light and green light. So it's a very good place to start if you want to gain mastery in somatics, because which I'm proposing to you is well worth it. But to understand these two basic reflexes, which Hannah goes on at length about in his book, but it's also easy to overlook. Even having read it, even having experience with somatics, it can still be easy to overlook that the exercises also that he proposes in the book, which he outlines in the book, the first two of that series are specifically addressing red light and green light, and those exercises are meant to be done in progression. Ideally, you don't move on to the next lesson until you've had some kind of fairly profound experience with the first, or with the one that you're working with presently. That would, for somebody who has the discipline, I would say, to be able to do that and to be able to have the motivation to do it, you will get very good results. I would highly recommend it. However, many of us are too, I would say, like ADHD. And so we have a hard time with that. So then you just start where you are. You know, you can attend these meetings. It's an excellent place to start. But my hope is to also then persuade you, by you having the experience in these meetings, and then having some kind of shift in these meetings. You could have a very profound shift, or you could have less profound shift, or you might have no shift. But but if you are persuaded by these meetings of the value of this, then I strongly encourage you to continue to explore throughout the week in this way. You can integrate it into your life. You really can, when you just start to play with it while you're doing the dishes, or while you're walking, while you're sitting at your desk. Just start to notice, okay, can I start to tune into the lightness of being? Can I notice that I am light? Now, my brain doesn't yet believe that. My brain still believes that I am this heaviness, right? That's what the conditioning is. I am this heaviness. So at first, I am the lightness of being. Seems sort of like Pollyannish or offensive in some way. But the invitation is, but wouldn't it be better? That's all. Couldn't you just imagine that might be better? And if you're truthful about it, you have to admit, well, yeah, it would be better. But now notice what's happening is there's this suppressive part that says, don't get your hopes up. This is the cynic. Don't get your hopes up. You've gotten your hopes up so many times, and you've been trashed by life because you're stupid and naive. Don't fall for it this time. Stay hardened. And you say, yeah, I'm not going to lightness of being. I won't have anything like that. But you have to really be willing to just see, well, yes, that conditioning is there. We all got that. Forget about it. What are you going to, you want to heal from it? Do this instead, which is just notice that, yeah, of course, that programming is there, but could you just imagine for a second the lightness of being? Doesn't that even sound nice? Doesn't that sound good? What would you rather? The cynical hardness of a miserable life, or the lightness of being? And I would rather the lightness of being. So then just be willing to try it on, because you've been wearing the endless misery of life suit of somatic conditioning for a while. So that's what is familiar. Now, that's what your brain says, do that. That's what works. That's what's getting us through life. That's, this is a bad situation. You just got to keep doing this because it's so bad, right? That's what keeps that pattern locked in place. Is it's bad. Just keep doing this thing because you're still surviving. God even knows how, because it's that bad. It's so bad that they're dropping left and right. You're the only one left standing. Why am I still here? Kind of thing. But then if you tell the truth, that's ridiculous. Actually, you're the only one that seems to be so miserable. Everybody else, as far as you know, is better off. So then you have to start to say, okay, yeah, the lightness of being sounds better. So I'll just be willing to try that on. So you just start to feel, what if I was really light? And then you start to notice, whoa, what just happened there? Because if you really start to let that on, and you start to allow yourself to breathe, like breathe without strain, you allow just natural, satisfying breaths, how they happen spontaneously, and don't suppress it. Well, that's the hardest thing. But you start to just invite that possibility. Invite that you don't have to hold that tension in the abdomen. You don't have to keep that knot. You don't have to keep things so numb. You don't have to keep doing that. Just open to the possibility that this lightness of being is real. And then be willing to explore that by letting go of whatever is unnecessary, and find out what's that like. Now, your brain, remember, is going to tell you, what are you doing? This isn't safe. this is the wrong thing. You can't do this. You've got to do that other thing. Go back to it now. And you're going to be thinking, yeah, I got to go back to that thing. You're like hypnotized. So whatever it's saying, you say, oh yeah, I got to do that. I got to do that. And you say, I don't know. I don't know why I just keep coming back to this. I don't know why. I don't even know how it happens. It just happens. You know, as far as I know, I'm like this, but then the next thing I know, I'm like this. I don't know how that happens. Yes, you don't know how it happens, but only because you're not paying attention. You pay attention in this somatic way and you start to notice, oh yeah, there I'm doing it. Oh yeah, there I'm doing it. And you start to notice what is that whole thing that's happening. It's not just the movement. There's a whole process that's happening that's taking over, and it's like it's unconscious. So what's happening is there's an unconscious pattern that is overtaking, and you allow it, but don't allow it. Notice why you allow it. You allow it, you make excuses. I'm just pointing this out. I'm not pointing the finger at you. Well, I am, but I wasn't. I'm not pointing a finger at you saying that you are doing anything bad. I'm just describing what we're all doing so that you can see it, and you can see that there is really a choice, but you have to see why you're doing and how you're doing what you're habitually doing before the choice is real. So you have to see that here it is. I'm not doing that thing. I'm not doing that thing that I'm used to doing. And I'm conscious that I'm not doing that thing, but I feel uncomfortable. Right? So you have to be aware and then slow it down even more. Notice, what is that discomfort? Because that discomfort will start to overtake you if you allow it, because your habit is to run away from discomfort. We all do it. It's not just you. So you're not bad for that. We're just wanting to see this is what we're working with. So you see that I am doing this. Well, I have this habit of going back into this posture that requires more unnecessary effort. Watching how that happens, and I noticed this strong urge to go unconscious. You have to feel that. You have to feel that strong urge to go unconscious, and it will just. You're wanting to be aware of one thing, right? You just actually want to be aware of one thing. You don't need to be aware of all those other things, but notice what happens is you start getting drawn unconscious because start to get scared. What if I don't give attention to that thing there? What if I don't go think about that thought there? What if I don't do that? Maybe something bad will happen. I got to do that. I got to give attention to those things. They're needing my attention. It's really important. But this is how we get lulled back into unconsciousness over and over and over. And we have to be clear on this is, again, why I emphasize in all the meetings the importance of intention. We have to be clear on what is my intention. I have to prioritize one thing. Because if I don't, or if I have to know how to triage, because otherwise, then it's like, how can the king function if everybody can come to the king all the time with everything, anything at all? That's no way to do it. The king has to be this sort of hierarchy where he says, look, for these types of things, if you all can resolve it, you resolve it. You can do that. You're empowered. You know the right ways. You do it. Good. I don't want to have to deal with that. Those are small things. They can be dealt with there. And up the hierarchy. But you're suspicious of that. And you pride yourself on that suspiciousness. Because Of course you must, because that suspiciousness is what you say keeps you alive. Everybody knows life's not safe. You got to be suspicious. You can't be taken advantage of. Remember all those times I've been taken advantage of? Well, not again, buddy. No way. I'm going to stay hardened. And that's the mandate. It's not your enemy. It's what you programmed, albeit at a lower level of consciousness. So we need to update it, because now we are at a higher level of consciousness. People can take issue with that, but you can't tell me that you're not at a higher level of consciousness than when you were 3. Much higher level of consciousness. All kinds of other functions have developed, but we're not able to make good use of them, because we're still having to deal with all these low level things all the time. Every little time, anytime there's a little prick of anything, anytime there's any movement, we're startled. Oh my God, what could it be? It might be dangerous. And we don't even know that there's another way. We don't even know, because the world doesn't know, because the world says, well, that's just age and that's just what's going to happen. If you think it's bad now, well, wait until you're 80. Ha ha ha. Like, that's what is that? Do you want to live that way? Do you want to accept that that's true? Because if you do, guess what? That's the path you're on. But when you accept that there is another way, and you have to first glimpse it. That's why I always am inviting you to directly experience. You have to just notice that, yes, I can, for one moment, I can experience the lightness of being. And I don't even know how I got there. I don't even know what it is. I have no idea, but I'm glimpsing it. You have to have that. And then you have to, so that helps you to know it's real. And then of course you're going to doubt it. You're going to say, well, but everybody, we know, the world knows, everybody, it just goes badly for everybody, and nobody gets out alive, and nothing's sure but death and taxes and all of this kind of stuff that we just use to keep ourselves hardened. And then we see through that hardened lens, and that's our experience. But the experience is completely dominated by this posture that we're taking on ever more tightly. And then we say it's all about the world, but it's not actually. It's about what I'm doing. And that's why this is so powerful, is that when there's something that you don't like, notice it's your experience, and then be very curious about, how do I do that? Because if I know how I do it, I can not do it. And if I can not do it, then I don't have to have that unwanted experience anymore. It's that simple and that challenging at the same time, because it requires that you stay focused on the one thing. So notice that strong pull, and it's probably already happened, right? Since the last time I was bringing your attention to the thing that you're not doing, now you find that you're doing it again. And how did you come to do it again? Because your attention went elsewhere. And it's my fault because I brought your attention there, right? But that's the thing, is in life, we're going to be presented with many things. And, you can't do them all. You got to choose, what one do you want? And you can see what happens when people do that thing. What happens when people choose that thing? Do I want that? Because you can see what happens when people do those things. I mean, certain professions, what happens to people in those professions? Are they, 9,000 times more likely to be shot to death? You might want to know that before you go into the profession, right? So we want to be educated rather than just, well, this is all I know, so I got to keep doing it. No. Wake up and see what is the end result of this path. if I continue doing this thing? If I continue with this posture, what can I expect? I can change all these other things all I want, and maybe some of those things will be helpful. I'm not going to deny that. If your nutrition is bad and you're experiencing some negative effects of a bad nutrition, will improving your nutrition help you to feel better? Yes. How much better? I don't know. Depends on how bad you're feeling from what other causes. But I can guarantee you that if you're doing this all day, you're going to feel really bad. So, and the brilliance of it is that let's say that's only 50. That's why I said, what if it's only 50%? What if it's only half of your problems are because of this? I'm doing this as an example, but it doesn't have to be that. I mean, it could be that you're doing this, you think, or you think, no, I'm very poised. I don't know what he's talking about. Then you've got a much more complicated case going on, I guess. But the thing about it is just to notice that I'm doing these things, and they must be accounting for a significant percentage of the bad experiences that I'm having, because I feel so much better when I'm not doing them. But there's a competing conditioning, which I need to also be aware of, which is saying you got to keep doing that thing because that's what keeps you safe. So stop paying attention to it, because if you keep paying attention to it, it's going to change, and that might be not safe. So whenever you listen to that and you let that overtake you, that when that programming to suppress, to go numb, when that overtakes you, then because of the fear of being yourself, that's fundamentally what it is, just the fear of being yourself. It sounds so new agey, but it's true. You can look and see fundamentally, who are you? Well, just whatever is happening. But we, and maybe rightfully so, because it's helpful to us as social animals, have had to learn how to control that, because otherwise we might do stupid things. Just because something is shiny does not mean you should reach out and touch it. Just because something looks interesting doesn't mean you should put it in your mouth. So these are useful lessons, but we have applied them too broadly and too strongly and too blindly. And so it continues to feed into this state of somatics, what Hannah calls sensory motor amnesia, but it really is broader than that. I mean, when you're not feeling and you're not sensing and you're not able to do, because you're in so much pain, so exhausted, so locked up, so afraid. That's not a good life. And so that's what we need to be aware of, is that I'm making this choice, that I see the truth of it. I'm making this choice. I'm choosing to take control here. And that means that have to be awake. I have to be present. I have to stay with this. I have to be aware of what it is that I have the habit of doing that I don't need to do. And then I need to stay with that long enough long enough, which is enhanced by skillfully enough, because long enough could be a second, or long enough could be an hour. That there's skill involved too, but we can't go into all of those things. And we can't go into all those things. It's definitely not today because we're running over, but that each of those are their own exploration to see the things that will add skill, that will allow for a faster positive outcome. But the most useful thing, which is what we covered today, is to feel the lightness of being, because it gives you the most direct. So when you feel that lightness of being, even if you still don't know what I'm talking about, I mean, of course, you're never going to know exactly what I'm talking about, because I couldn't even tell you exactly what I'm talking about, because it can't be understood. It's the direct experience of it. There it doesn't, or here it doesn't need to be understood. But we can continue in our learning process, the refinement of taking away all that is not needed, all that's unnecessary in our understanding and embodiment of the lightness of being. And that means we're going to face fear. It's a process of meeting that fear, because that fear is the gatekeeper that's there trying to do its job to keep the status quo in place. But we are just continuing to be restfully aware, and knowing that this, I'm experiencing more by releasing in this way, by not making that unnecessary effort. I am directly experiencing an enlivening of the lightness of being. I actually feel it more. It's more alive in my experience. But I also am now aware of these other things that I wasn't aware of before, because my attention was all in maintaining that one unnecessary thing. So now I'm going to just stay with releasing this one thing until this is clear enough that now I can start. Naturally, what will happen is I'll start to notice, okay, this actually, I know how I'm releasing to here, and that feels good. But there's something else that I'm still doing that I haven't yet released. And it's just a little bit somewhere else that I'm doing it. And then you start to feel where that is. And then you just start to, you just keep your attention there, and you just notice how are you doing that? Now the brain at first is going to say, oh, the way that you fix that is to do this thing that you just have not been doing. But of course, that's because that's what the brain has learned. But instead, you stay very present, keep slowing it down, don't rush into anything, and you just keep being aware that, okay, I'm still releasing that thing that I don't need to do, that I'm now aware of that I don't need to do, where I feel better not doing it. But it's still tentative, this learning at this point. The other thing, the old way could actually easily take over and replace it again, but it's here, and I'm just broadening my awareness, because there's this sort of like web of these imprints, these somatic imprints, where this now being released reveals, it kind of shows where there's now more tension somewhere else in that web. And so now just keep letting this release, and I'm letting my attention also start to now notice where that other thing that I'm doing is. So I'm aware of just these two things in this kind of like moving back and forth between them, because I can only really be aware of one at a time. But I'm clarifying, in a sense, the connection between the two. So once that connection is stabilized, I'll have more confidence that I can keep more attention on the newer thing, because the original thing, now I have a really quick path back to it, a very quick neurological connection to it. So I can very quickly, easily maintain awareness of that and this new one. And so I just now start to have more awareness on the new things, a little bit of peripheral awareness on the other thing. And so now most of my attention is on the newer thing, just peripherally aware of the previous thing in this network. And I just now start to notice this new thing. How am I doing it? So it's not even how can I release it? It's how am I doing it? So what am I doing? So now you just start to notice kind of downstream, or I guess upstream from there, what are the things that are contributing to this sensation? Because there's some effort being made somewhere, but it's usually a little bit upstream. So you kind of have to broaden your perception to be more inclusive of that broader area. So this is a basic, simple process. I'm not suggesting it's the fastest, although it's possible that it is in some situations for some people, but it is a very effective process. It just requires that you are clear on what is most important, because there are going to continue to be many requests for your attention, so to speak, for one process to dominate another. But once you've identified, here's a process that it's like this is the lowest hanging fruit. This is the thing that if I could stop doing this, I would definitely feel better. Maybe not 100% better, maybe only 1% better, but I would definitely, for sure, no doubt about it, feel better, at least a little bit, if I stop doing this. And so it's very worth my while to stop doing it, because let's say that the whole posture consists of, let's say the whole posture accounts for 50% of your problems. So that's a big amount. So obviously, resolving this is going to help tremendously in your experience. Maybe it doesn't solve everything, but it will solve an enormous amount all at once. But this whole posture, which is causing 50% of your problems in between you and me, much more than 50%, but we'll say, we'll say 50% just to be on the safe side. But it's causing 50% of your problems. So it's definitely where you should be putting your attention. But this posture consists of, let's say, 1,000 micro efforts. So when you release one, you say, yeah, I definitely feel better, but it's not that much, because there's 1,000. So you've just, 1/10 of 1%. That's not that much. This is why people say, I'll do the fancier thing. I'll do the thing that has the fancy name that I can't pronounce. I'll do that thing that's, it's in Sedona. I'm not saying the Sedona method. I'm just saying, things in Sedona. I don't even know if the Sedona method's in Sedona, but, you can, it will say, do these other things, because this one's not giving me great results. But you only did one of 1,000. And you say, yeah, but that was hard. It took me a year of attending meetings and listening to stuff that I was like, this sounds wacko, quacko. I don't know what is being said. Before I got that, I'm not going to, I can do the math. I'm not going to live for that long that it's going to give me what I want. So this is not the way for me. But you have to understand, yes, but it's exponential. Yeah, the first one took a year before something clicked. It's not going to take another year before the next one. It will take maybe, I don't know, a day, a week, then maybe 5 seconds. I don't know. But then the next one will be even quicker. Should be, if you're doing it correctly. So then you do the math. All of a sudden, it's very different. It's like, oh, you mean if I dedicated myself to this for 6 months, 50% of my problems would be gone forever? Wow, that sounds interesting now, doesn't it? But we can shorten that. In order to do that, we need to shorten the gap of, so it's not a year before 1/10 of 1% is dissolved. Then it can be much, much faster. And it then near the end, it's like wisps of smoke. So hopefully this has been a instructive inspiring exploration of practical value to you, because that's my goal. I'm like an ambassador. I don't know that I'm an ambassador that any organization would want on their behalf, but I am nonetheless an ambassador of somatics because I am a believer. I know the power of it, and I want you to experience it. And I want to quicken the learning process for you so that you can start having regular, reliable experiences that allow you to release the unnecessary inefficiencies so that you can be more able to give your full attention to what you most want. And when you give your attention fully to what you most want, it is made real, because it is simply, the reality is what you perceive, which entirely depends on where your attention is. If you give your attention 100% to what you truly want, really what is authentically true for you, meaning actually you, not something that somebody else said you should be or should want, but the truth of who you are, then you're 100% committed to your truth. And that your truth then is not even your truth, it's simply truth, because you being you is serving the whole. There's nobody else who can offer what you offer. And it's not about, making stuff. It's not about keeping the economy going. It's not about saving the world. It's not about any of those things. It's about you being that, being yourself, which is to be the lightness of being, the lightness of being, to be that light. Then you start to see the whole network is lightened, not because you're an ambassador, not because you're a prophet, because you're just saying, look, it's within you. Here's the knowledge. Here's how to see it. Look in this way, experiment in this way, explore in this way, and you too can discover the lightness of being, because you are that. You just have learned how to behave in this other way, and it was innocent. And yes, it's scary, and yes, there are challenges, and here's what they are, and here's how to persevere so that you can receive all of the benefits that are due to you, because they are who you are. You are the lightness of being. Feel that, allow that, be that, express that, embody that. And how can you know? By feeling the lightness of being and noticing where you are limiting that fullness by making some unnecessary effort, and then just keep exploring, allowing the lightness of being. Feel that lightness of being, and then that becomes so real, because your brain now accepts that. It was only diluted before by a distorted, limiting belief. Not a bad belief, just one that is distorted and limiting distorted and thereby limiting in many contexts where it's not applicable, but it's applied too broadly. So we're just learning how to differentiate and discriminate, to have discernment, to be clear on what I want. What do I want most? What is the very most important? And let me stay with that, and let me stay with where I can specifically give my attention in regard to that will most reliably, safely, and fairly quickly produce positive, lasting, definite, undoubtable benefits, even if they're very small at first, which they're not guaranteed to be, but even if they are. So now we're going to wrap it up there. And I think I'm glad that I'm just looking at the comment that came across in the chat, and glad that I rallied the crowd. It really is possible. It's possible. You keep on exploring, and then you let me know how I can support you if you have questions or doubts, challenges that come up. Let me know. It should be as you gain more skill, you'll have more confidence, you'll be able to take more skillful steps that are more measured and more sustainable for you, that ultimately allow you to have more reliable results. So we're like those bouncing baby goats at first, right? I'm aiming for this, but I'm going over there instead. I don't know. Guess it didn't work, but we keep doing it, and then eventually, oh, this is how. I was just doing these wild, uncontrollable things unconsciously, but now I can do it with efficiency. And this then is like gives confidence because we have competence. So it's not as difficult or complicated as we've been led to believe. It just requires that you have to persist in it, and you have to take people up on their offers of support if they're people you trust to give you good help in these things, because don't be mindless about it, but don't just take any advice, even if it's from somebody you trust. If you think that seems wrong to me, then get clarification about it and make sure. But do take offers of support from those who you trust to be able to offer you support in this domain, because otherwise it dramatically reduces the learning curve. Even if your learning curve, let's say your learning curve is destined to be 100 years, and even if it can only be reduced by half, you say, well, that's not enough. I'm still not going to live that long to be able to get to 100%. Okay, but hey, that was 50% right there. Maybe there's somebody else, or maybe the same person still has more. There's still, why do you think it has to be only that? It could be you continue, and like I say, it becomes exponential. Just when you're thinking of giving up hope, don't. Or give up. Be discerning about the hope too, because see how the hope can be limiting. The hope is still a way that you're clinging to some old disempowered idea, and so you see that you can give up that hope, and you still are, that the lightness of being still is. That's also huge. So in all of these things, and more, but to notice that lightness of being and start to trust in the lightness of being and play with that, explore that, see what can the lightness of being take. This heaviness here that I think I have to hold on to, can the lightness of being take that? Let me give it and find out. You keep playing like that, and then who knows what's possible. But one thing is, you're guaranteed that if you keep trusting in it, it will be something different, and different might be good, and the same is almost definitely bad. So this is a good direction to keep exploring in this way, because it works, and it will work, and it will work for you. It's revealing the lightness of being to you ever more intimately, so that you can embody that, and then you are free. You're free to play and to be yourself, which is a good thing. That's why you're here. That's why we need you here. A lot of talking today, so we've gone way over, but thank you everybody for joining as always. And I really do mean it. Take me up on my offer. If you have any doubts, concerns, questions related to any of this, I'm here in support because I want you to have the experiences and the gifts that are available through this kind of exploration. So that's it for now. Thank you for joining. Blessings to you all, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.